Good evening and welcome to our Corporate Service Committee meeting. This is meeting number 1 for 2026. Today is Tuesday, February the 17th, and I am your chair, Councillor Shelley Braderick. Comments can be made from members of the public for a matter that is on the agenda by advising the chair during the request to address an item on the agenda section of the agenda. The public may submit written comments for matters that are on the agenda to jpaylove@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting for consideration by the committee. Comments received after 4:30 p.m. on the day of the committee meeting will be considered at the following council meeting. Comments submitted are included in the record. This meeting will be live streamed as well as recorded and available on the Township website. The Land Acknowledgement Statement. The Township of West Lincoln, being part of the Niagara region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattahawk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. We stand with all the Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands in which we live. Is there any change in order of items on the agenda? Seeing none? Oh, I apologize. Councillor Chichuk, you have a request to change items on the agenda? Oh, she can't hear us. So I'm assuming yes. While we get that sorted out, I did not start the meeting by acknowledging that Councillor Rayner sent his regrets for tonight, and Councillor Chichuk is attending virtually, as we can see. So we're just working to see on if we can get some sound from Councillor Chichuk. Looks like she can hear us. No, maybe not. Can you hear us, Councillor Chichuk? Can you give us thumbs up?
Is anybody in communication with her?
I texted her and she didn't answer. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't hear now, she said. Is she out of, can she speak? She unmuted herself.
Can you hear us now? No? I'll move.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Okay. All right, well, we'll go on because her hand is down. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest? Seeing none. We'll go to number 5, which is appointment. 5.1, KPMG, Carlos Alvarez, Lead Audit Engagement Partner. 2025 Audit Planning Report, which is a PowerPoint presentation, and I will go to Carlos, and he has a presentation for us.
The audit plan, which would have been circulated in advance, is a pretty long document. I'm not going to go through all 30, 35 pages. I'll make some comments on those items that I think are most significant and material that I certainly want you to be aware of as part of the audit plan. So a few pages into the report, in terms of highlights, on page number 4, as a reminder, your financial statements will be prepared under the public sector accounting standards. Good news for fiscal 2025, there were no accounting changes. So the way that your debits and credits come together for fiscal 2025, there'll be no changes as compared to the prior year. As a reminder, We as auditors do not audit every single transaction and every single piece of paper. We have this concept of materiality that we use to plan before the audit for fiscal 2025. Oh, thank you. That has been set at $646,000. Individually, $646,000 is a really large number. If there's one number to remember out of my presentation, it is $32,000. That is our tolerance level for audit misstatements. Any misstatements that we detect as part of the audit process, we will come to you in June with any and all misstatements that exceed that $32,000. So that should give you a better sense as to our level of precision as part of the audit process. As a reminder, your financial statements use the term consolidated. That is because you have various components and subsidiaries that form part of the consolidated set. All of those components are the same as compared to 2024. Moving along in the report on page number 6. In terms of the initial materiality, there is a little bit of science that goes into how we came up with the $646,000 within the province of Ontario. There are very well-known benchmarks that are used by municipalities. We use 3% of your total revenues from the prior year to determine that numerical amount. And we will update this amount at year-end if needed, based on your 2025 actual numbers. And these benchmarks are all consistent with other municipalities in the province. Again, with the concept of a consolidated audit, this slide presents the components at the bottom of page 7, and each of those components has work that is done on each of the different entities, and we adjust the materiality based on the size of the entity. Okay. From a risk assessment perspective, if you were to thumb down your financial statements, if you think of the balances that are most material, generally there's risks that are embedded in those amounts. This slide would be very consistent with the prior year. We do like to highlight that the management override of controls is a very specific risk that exists on every single audit in Canada. This is not unique to you, the township, and that is why we use that little purple bullet color. The other risks from revenue recognition down to investments, again, these would be the areas that garner the majority of our attention and our audit effort. Digging a little bit further into the management override of controls, we as auditors are always required to respond to the risk of management override of controls. Think of this as items related to fraud. So, for example, as part of our audit process, we always have a heightened level when manual journal entries are made. So one of the anti-fraud tests that we perform is making sure that somebody has reviewed the journal entries separate from the individual that prepared them. Just a fundamental concept of segregation of duties. As well, another example would be any estimates that are used in preparing these financial statements. We look at the estimates and determine, are they overly aggressive? Are they neutral? Or are they overly conservative? And certainly we will report to you at year end if we think any of the estimates sort of go on two ends of the extremes. In terms of the fraud risk over revenue recognition, this is a rebuttable risk in Canada. For the majority of municipalities, we do rebut the fraud risk. However, we still do all of the audit procedures over revenues to ensure that they are complete, that they exist, and certainly that they're accurate. And we also do cutoff tests to make sure that the revenues that are reflected in your financial statements do in fact relate to the current accounting period. Page 11 and onward go into some of the detailed procedures on what we do on each of these different areas. I will skip over to talk about the last one on page number 12. So within your financial statements, you do have your investment in Penn West Power, in which there's a separate audit done on that entity and on that group. But again, all of these areas will be consistent with the prior year. Employee benefit obligations is always an area that has what I would call some inherent complexity, because that is a number that is not derived by your management team. Your management team uses the specialists from an actuarial firm to help with a determination of that obligation. We do obtain reports from the actuary. We don't simply blindly accept the reports. We look at their assumptions to make sure that they're reasonable based on our judgment and our experience. Asset retirement obligations is not as significant for fiscal 2025. For those of you who may recall, this was a new standard that was introduced in 2023. There was a heavy lift in that first year of implementation, but now it's more or less just updating the assumptions on an annual basis. There's a lot of meat on the bone on slide number 14. This text points to the fact that organizations of all types and sizes, should have a control environment in place. We do update our inquiries with management on an annual basis, but hopefully this slide will spur some thought in terms of how you see risk, how you see the control environment. What are some of the anti-fraud controls? Whistleblower programs. Out of the 400 plus municipalities in the province of Ontario, there's half of them that do have a whistleblower program, the other half do not. That is an area that I would say always needs to be looked at. My only ask of council is that if you do have concerns around alleged or suspected fraud, do tell your auditors, and that would be us. So my contact information is listed at the beginning of the report. Certainly raise any concerns, and I put a date here of May 1st. Why May 1st? Well, just because if there are concerns and they're raised to me, that gives us as a firm enough time to respond and maybe do some things differently as part of the audit process. And that's why I landed on the date of May 1st. Again, I'm not coming to council with any specific concerns. This is more or less just the protocol that we would like to follow. In terms of the overall timing, we do expect that the timing is consistent with the prior year and, in fact, more accelerated when we come to the final issuance of the financial statements. I will skip to the appendices. There are 4 appendices. Moving to Appendix C. Just in terms of accounting standards, I made the comment there's nothing new for this year. However, there's some excitement that's going to happen in about 2 years. So the look and the feel of your financial statements will change, but that will not be until 2027. So maybe as part of the audit findings report or getting into next year, we can show you some illustrative examples on how your financial statements will look differently in 2 years' time. But nothing to be concerned about this year. This is the brain page on slide 26. Again, just some areas where you can use as resources. There is the Board Leadership Center, which is on the left side of the brain. Again, it just goes through what are some questions that you as council should be asking, because collectively you are considered those charged with governance. So certainly you have a duty and responsibility as part of your role. Hopefully these links work. If they don't work, please let me know through management. Okay. So in a nutshell, we are expecting a smooth audit, a little bit more accelerated compared to last year, but we're expecting sort of a no surprises approach to the audit. So with that, I will pause, and back to you, the chair.
Thank you very much, sir. I've never heard the words exciting and accounting standards used in the same sentence, but hey, to each his own. I will turn to my colleagues to see if they have any comments or questions. Councillor Maychuk.
Here it goes. Through the chair, I have 2 questions, one of which you did identify some risk with management override of controls. Are you recommending to staff any steps to reduce that risk, and if so, what may they be? And from a former municipality, I know on occasion, not here, never heard of it here, but sometimes duplicate invoices come in and they get paid. So the contractor, the individual sending the invoices gets double paid. And that's happened in any municipality. So I just want to make sure there's a safeguard to ensure that doesn't happen, but I'll let you answer those 2 questions.
Sure. Through you, the chair, on that first question, when you think about control environments and management override of control, there's never a finish line. It is always an evolution, and what I would say is each year you should make a little bit of progress in terms of getting to where you want to be. So, for example, having very clear roles and responsibilities, not just of individuals within the finance group, but corporate-wide, to make sure that every employee specifically knows their role and their responsibility, looking at your staffing levels. Do you have the adequate number of resources to align with a highly functioning group of personnel? So those are 2 things that I would say you need to continue to look at. Also, performance management. How do you deal with individuals that may need additional training, additional courses? I can probably share 15 items that are just table stakes in terms of what organizations should be looking at on an annual basis. Again, I'm not pointing out that there's a deficiency or something's inferior, but these topics should be discussed on an annual basis, almost like cybersecurity. That should be a topic that should at least garner some attention on an annual basis, again, as part of your normal evolution. So that would be my comment on the first piece. On the second piece, relating to procurement in terms of double payment or actually fraud. We do see cases where, the address of a vendor is the same as an address of an employee. There are certain tools that now are pretty well known that you can use to implement some anti-fraud controls on checking addresses, for example, also checking multiple addresses for different organizations. So I would maybe recommend, through management, maybe identifying what are some of those tools that might have a little dollar investment, but could go a long way in terms of the anti-fraud controls. And as well, in terms of procurement, again, there's now systems that will do automatic matching to help avoid the double payment scenario. And I would say these are all items that, as part of us advancing in terms of AI and other tools, should naturally be looked at on an annual basis.
Good. Is there anybody else who has questions? Okay, it looks like we're all got the information that we need, and we'll look forward to the end result. Thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 6, which is the request to address items on the agenda. 1 hour in total should be allocated for this section of the agenda, and each individual person shall only be provided with 5 minutes to address their issue. Some exceptions may apply. A response may or may not be provided, and the matter may be referred to staff. Are there any members of the public present who wish to address any items on the Corporate Service Committee agenda? Seeing none, and I will turn to IT to see if there's anybody virtually.
Not seeing any, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Moving to item 7, communications. 7.1, item CS0126, Fax Niagara Foundation. The 5th Annual Mountain View Lemonade Day for Fax Niagara, Saturday, June 13th, 2026. The recommendation is that 1, that Council of the Township of West Lincoln hereby supports Family and Children's Services, Fax Niagara, their upcoming fundraising and community event being Mountain View Lemonade Day to be held on Saturday, June 13, 2026, and 2, that administration be directed to promote the upcoming fundraiser and community event by sharing the message on Township social media platforms. Can I have a mover? Councillor Riley, second by Mayor Ganan. And we have a presentation on that? No presentation. Any questions, comments from the council? Okay, we'll look to vote. And the vote should be in front of you. And that carries. 7.2, item CS0226, West Lincoln Age-Friendly Advisory Committee, minutes January 9th, 2026. The recommendation is that the West Lincoln Age-Friendly Advisory Committee minutes dated January 9th, 2026 be received. Can I have a mover? Councillor Trombetta, second by Councillor Chichak. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, and the vote will come in front of you. And that carries. 7.3, item CS0326, Manager Legislative Services Clerk Justin Paylove, a memo drainage agreement with SNP for information. I'm going to turn to the clerk to see if he has any comments for that.
Through the chair to the rest of council, this is to fulfill a condition of consent. These individuals had come to merge an ag property and sever off a piece for, I assume, one of their children. It is affected by the 15-mile municipal drain. We have sent this to our drainage supervisor, who has no concerns, and it is just a condition to fulfill for this final severance. That bylaw will be presented in front of council by the end of the month.
Okay. Any comments or questions from anybody? All right. Seeing none, that was just for information, so there's no vote. 8, staff reports. 8.1, item CS0426, the Fire Chief Re-Information Report, WLFD-02-2026, monthly update, January 2026. The recommendation is that 1, that information report titled WLFD-02-2026, monthly update, January 2026, dated February 17th, 2026, be received, and 2, that budget amendment BA 2026-03 in the amount of $32,000 to recognize the Ontario Fire Protection Grant to be used towards personal protective and decontamination equipment be approved by council. Can I have a mover? Mayor Ganan, second by Councillor Riley. Any comments? Oh, we'll turn to the chief first.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess I can just expand a little bit on what that grant is for. I think it was last year was the first year of anticipated to be 3 in which the provincial government is providing funding to fire departments in Ontario. And this is kind of a new funding arrangement that they've come up with to sort of support fire departments in cancer prevention primarily, but there have been other initiatives that we're able to contribute these funds to as well. So in this particular iteration of the grant, we applied for funding that would provide our firefighters with some supplementary gear, not specifically for firefighting, but more for the activities that they'd carry out in the fire halls when they're not doing firefighting activities. So this would be drills, maintenance, things of that nature. So some additional footwear and some coveralls, things of that nature to support those activities. This follows a recommendation from the sort of the officials, the medical directives that we get that advise that firefighters should generally spend as little time in their bunker gear as possible because of the contamination of the fire materials that can kind of get entrapped in the fabric of the bunker gear, and it's essentially it just kind of becomes kind of permanent. It's very, very difficult to remove. So rather than trying to have a separate set of bunker gear, this gives us an alternative measure for reducing the amount of time that they're in the gear while still sort of supporting the initiative. So additional to that, there was some equipment that we can put into our trailer that will help support our firefighters cleaning up after fires wherein they get, really covered in soot, dirt, things from byproducts of combustion. And we have, council provided us with funding for a trailer to take to our calls. We've been outfitting that over the years, and this grant also supports some of the initiative to put equipment in there for that purpose as well. So we're hoping that this program will continue kind of as an ongoing thing from the provincial government, but at this point I believe it's still just meant to be for a 3-year period. So this was year 2 out of the 3. We're hoping that it gets sort of adopted as an alternative funding method permanently for fire departments, because this is obviously this is money that we didn't anticipate getting, so we were able to procure these items in a fashion that we hadn't anticipated that we were going to do. We hadn't done so through the regular budget process, and that's basically why we had to come at council with a budget amendment in order to accommodate the funds being transferred in.
Very good. Well, thanks for, it sounds like a great initiative. Is there any questions or comments from the remainder of council? Councillor Chichuk? No? Okay, seeing none, the vote will come in front of you. And that carries. Okay, moving along to item 8.2. CS 05-26, Director of Legal and Legislative Services, Jessica Dyson. Re-Information Report LLS 02-2026, Bylaw Enforcement Services Year-End Update. The recommendation is that Information Report LLS 02-2026, titled Bylaw Enforcement Services Year-End Update, dated February 17th, 2026, be received. Can I have a mover? Councillor Riley and Councillor Maychuk. Is there any questions or comments for the director? Seeing none, and we will go to the vote. Must be a gold medal hockey game everybody's trying to get to. Okay, and that carries. Item 8.3, item CS 06-26, Manager of Legislative Services / Clerk, Justin Paylove. Recommendation Report LLS 01-2026, Amendment to Delegate Authority. Authority to pursue partnerships through fee waivers. The recommendation is that 1, that Recommendation Report LLS 01-2026, titled Amendment to Delegate Authority, Authority to Pursue Partnerships Through Fee Waivers, dated February 17th, 2026, be received, and 2, that Council approves a bylaw such as the draft bylaw attached as Schedule A. I'm going to turn to the clerk for some, oh, sorry, yes. Ahead of myself, a mover. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Mayor Ganan and Councillor Chichuk. And I will now turn to the clerk. Thank you.
Through the chair to the rest of council, and I'll just quickly go over a little bit of the report before I turn it over to Cynthia, who can go over a little bit more of the operational capacity that this will allow. This has kind of been on the horizon for us. However, council had noted throughout a few situations over the course of the last probably year and a half, where there is some expediency required for certain partnerships, or there should have been expediency for certain partnerships. This happened during the international plowing match, where council directed administration to go pursue community partnerships to support that event. Sorry, excuse me. And it also came up in the recent report, I think in November or December, and that was for the YMCA partnership as well. Council had noted in conversation that this initiative should be expanded upon, and for other opportunities, this was a common sense tool for administration to pursue, and this is where we are seeking council support in order for us to allow it under this very specific paradigm. However, I can turn it over to Cynthia now, who will explain it more for the operational impact for her department.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and Council. As the clerk has said, Council has raised this a few times. On a practical basis, in my role as director, I've been approached, such as with the Y, where there was a real pressure because we needed to come back to Council and we needed to wait for an appropriate Council meeting. The goal of this directive is to be responsive to the community. That's number one, so we can react quickly when there's an appropriate request. The second goal is to realize the goal of creating a community hub at West Lincoln Community Center. Anyone who had the pleasure of attending yesterday saw what I thought was the vision of that community center. It was bustling with people, at least 1,000 people. 685 people attended the library, participated in trivia. The open barn had the open gym, very different.
I missed that.
Had 75 families participate. Youth soccer played, 50 kids were playing. 75 children participated in flag football. There was face painters. The West Lincoln Super Skills Group was there with 60 participants. Icon Dance Party had 75 participants. And the first time I ever saw the Lincoln Leapers, which was amazing, there were over 100 people watching their performance. It was a joyful environment, and it was a true community hub because there were so many participants, and then there were different sponsors of the event. And since I've started, that's what I've heard the vision is, that the community wants this. And it showed yesterday that if we offer it, people want to participate. So it sounds like I'm talking about yesterday, which I am a little bit, but I think that this policy, first of all, it will have guiding principles. Like, we're going to be serving West Lincoln community members, not non-community members. It'll be only used in rare occasions. It'll be used for nonprofit or low-income community members, and it'll make West Lincoln recreation services more accessible to those in the community who require access and simply can't participate right now. A few things that I'd like Council to consider when you consider this request is that, number one, Council can revoke this at any point, and I'll let Justin confirm that from his role, but it can be revoked. So if at any point you thought this isn't working, it would just be, you would revoke it and we'd go another path. The protections are in place. The idea is that I would report at least annually on every single time we've used this. My honest expectation is that we'll use this maybe 3 to 5 times a year. It's going to be by exception and need, not as the norm. And there's a $10,000 limit. Now, even that limit you might think seems quite high. Again, Justin can speak to this, but this number was arrived at with the YMCA as the example. Because if we were to decide to use a community group like the Y to provide servicing for, say, a whole summer, That would be a realistic number. The thing that I want to leave you with is the most important thing to me, besides delivering services to the community, is being open and transparent with council and ensuring that I'm doing what you want and what you want for your constituents. So I'm not going to take risk. When in doubt, I will always come to council first. I will not be making large waivers without council knowing and approving in advance. But this will allow me in my role to be flexible and nimble. I think it'll make us better community members. For example, we have West Lincoln Minor Hockey that brings in $180,000 a year in revenue, plus charities at Christmas, food drives, supporting community, West Lincoln Community Center. And in this regard, we're the only area that they play in that hasn't provided quarterly meeting rooms for an hour and a half. I think as a good community member to recognize their contributions, it would be nice to be able to do that. So I'm really happy to answer any questions, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I'm just going to turn to the clerk for clarification on those two items that Cynthia had said you would provide.
Through the chair, if I can recall the specific one. One was that council may repeal and replace any such decision made in the delegated authority. That is always open to council's discretion. The delegation of authority bylaw is simply a tracking tool for council and members of the public to be aware of what powers or responsibilities are delegated down to staff. They are ultimately council's discretion on whether or not those remain committed to staff, with some legislative requirements obviously exempt. And then the other portion, I apologize, I don't recall the second thing that I needed clarification upon. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on that one.
Now you're putting me on the spot.
Yeah, me too. Was it about the reporting?
I'm sorry that I
Okay.
No,
did
me
not
too,
remember.
and I'm the one who's...
So we'll, maybe that'll come up as further questions emerge.
I think was it the $10,000 limit? I think that's what it was.
Yeah, through the chair, sorry. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, we did a little bit of a search broadly in neighboring communities, and it found that a $10,000 waiver was sort of in line. Again, noted that anything above or strategically West Lincoln wide would always be sought as council's permission first, as fee waivers can kind of be broad in terms of how the rec department works. It was always noted that irregardless of that 10,000 waiver, if it was a broad-based community strategically proposed partnership, that would automatically go to council first for consideration.
Yes.
I'd add one more thing, thank
Yes,
you,
of
through the
course.
chair. And also further clarification, guiding principle is that this, although it's a fee waiver, in reality, we won't be actually waiving fees. So the YMCA is the perfect example where that space would have been used by our staff if we didn't engage the YMCA. So there's no lost income. If a room was empty and unbooked and we wanted to provide it to a local charity or a local social worker or someone to use that room, we would not do that if the room was booked with a fee-paying member. So in fact, I don't anticipate any financial implication from this process.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to look around the horseshoe and see if there's any councilors. Councilor Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I might have missed something that might be answering my first question here. I have two questions. First one through you to our director. Does this cover the in-kind service? So if we were to offer something else, so this specifically speaks to fee waivers, but if there was other services that could be waived through a partnership and we do some kind of in-kind service instead, would that be calculated to fall within that 5,000 to 10,000 range or whatever the dollar figure is in-kind services similar? Much like what we did with the IPM there, where we offered some in-kind service and helped in other ways. Can that be captured at all, and would that be applied to this?
Through the chair to the councillor, I mean, my interpretation of this would be it would just be fee waivers. Any in kind, I would bring back to council with, a report to ask for permission to do that.
Okay, perfect. And the reason, so it kind of bleeds into my second question here, is I'm thinking about in the future, when a different council is leading and you have different staff, not so much about us in the moment, but thinking long term, how that interpretation can be applied. So when we see that we can, right now between the five, or it's up to $10,000 is at the discretion of staff to make that decision with that partnership, I think is reasonable considering what we're trying to do with the community, bring everyone together, and we want to have those partnerships. But I'd hate to think in the future that there's not enough clarity to define a ceiling to that. So right now we know you're very fiscally responsible, you're going to be mindful of how this affects the budget, but in the future as the community grows, if there's no ceiling to how many of these can be done a year, that's my concern, is how that's interpreted in the future and what burden that's possibly putting on there. So my question, Madam Chair, through you, is I don't see a ceiling in this. I know you're not going to be reckless, but in setting this policy correctly the first time, should we not be considering a maximum threshold of how many of these can be permitted within a year before having to come back to council? So if you manage to get 12 incredible opportunities, but that's going to take you, even if they all fall under $7,500, $8,000, that's, you can sign off on that, and that yet is almost 1% tax levy increase on the tax base here. So I want to know if we can if you'd be open to the idea of having a ceiling of how many of these we can adjust, or I guess green light through you.
Through the chair, I agree with you, that's a reasonable consideration. One of the challenges is, so I expect this will be used very carefully, right? So I assume that maybe we'll have, like I said, 3 to 5 of these incidents a year. I'm anticipating, like, the rental of a room is about $170. So within a year, I'm expecting we'll spend or waive $1,000, say, in the entire year. So I would be wary of including an absolute number of incidents, because we might have 10 $50 waivers, for example. I don't know if the clerk would have, quite frankly, in my opinion, we can put a limit on it. We're not going to ever get to that limit.
And so if I may, and so back to you, Madam Chair. So yeah, I'm not looking so much to maybe clarify my question. I'm not looking so much to say, hey, we can only do 10 of these events. I'm more looking for when it gets to a certain threshold, should we ever get there? And I'm not so much speaking in the short term. I'm thinking, like I said in the beginning, future councils, future staff, whoever happens to be at that time, they come back to council. So let's for the sake of speaking, let's just say the magic number is $50,000 in general. So we have, you guys can make the decision up to $10,000 per application, or however that works, but regardless of how many that takes to get there, once you hit that threshold, that immediately requires a response to come back to council, say, hey, listen, we've already exceeded what was in the policy. We don't know if any other opportunities are going to come forward. Can we now, what would you guys like to do moving forward? Do we just say no to everything, or do we just, bump up an increase? Again, this is not so much speaking to you specifically or this council specifically. I'm thinking about, this council is almost done in the next less than a year from now, and what that next council is going to inherit in the council after that. It might be 20, 30 years down the road, if we're still recognized as a municipality on our own, we haven't amalgamated or anything, then I want to make sure that there's extra safeguards in here, not leaving room for interpretation, because there could be, let's say, you decide, you're ready to move on, and we bring somebody else in, and there's turnover in leadership, and next thing you know, decisions are being made without realizing how we started. We're stepping into this, and I want to make sure that we have all the guardrails up to make sure that if we have all these opportunities, that maybe it needs to come back to council. So really, I'm just looking for a maximum threshold of how much could be spent in a year in the beginning. We don't have to handcuff it too much, but I think that we're planning for the future, not just planning for the moment.
So if I could just interject, I'm going to turn to the Director of Finance in regards to if she can confirm that this use of this policy would not actually impact the fee levy.
That's a good question there.
To the chair, thank you for the question. That's correct. This wouldn't, waiving of the fees here, essentially it's lost revenue, but it wouldn't have an impact on the budget, as these items wouldn't be something that would be included within the operating budget.
And if I could interject as well, and perhaps, Ms. Summers, you could comment on how, when these opportunities arise, would you be putting them forward in any type of a monthly report rather than waiting on an annual update, so that we would continuously be knowing about any of these opportunities that you would be excited to share with us, like the partnership with the Y?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be excited to share these. I mean, this will be a good news story if we're able to do this. Yes, I mean, I'm happy to report out on at any interval the council would prefer, quarterly, monthly. I do anticipate that in most occasions it will be 0, 0, 0, and then there'll be, one or two that'll happen. But absolutely, I'm happy to report out at whatever interval the council wishes.
I see Councillor Riley has a quick follow-up.
Yes, so through you back to our Director of Finance. So under financial implications, it says that the proposed amendment is expected to have a minimal fiscal or financial impact. So you're saying it's not going to have a financial impact, that it would just be seen as a net loss, but this document here clearly states that it can have a minimal financial impact, and that even though its anticipated costs are to be low and already accommodated within approved operating budgets, there's still some kind of financial commitment here. So if you could just clarify, I'm assuming this would have gone through you at some point, the interpretation of the language used within this document, that would be greatly appreciated, because it's a little misleading right now.
Through the chair to Councillor Riley. So the main financial impact here with the fee waiver is that there will be revenue that the township otherwise would have been expected to receive. It is going to be foregone. So it's like an opportunity cost to providing these services. The language regarding the minimal financial impact, that would have to just confirm with the director, as the wording would have come from Director of Community Services, but it may be small impact related to like staff time involved, resources, if there's going to be any kind of agreement, things like that, like those kinds of costs would be. I'll let the director, if she has any further comments to add on, but I believe that's what the minimal financial impact was meant to
It's implied?
mean.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understand that.
We'll go to Justin for that.
Through the chair, Councillor Riley is correct at the end there. That was more to account for time spent. So pursuing the YMCA document, that's obviously staff time. We didn't know if that partnership was going to work. And then also a minimal cost in the sense of what the director had brought up, where the opportunity cost, these are just made up fees, so just don't take these as literal, but it's $40 missed of renting the gym versus YMCA booking it for a week. That kind of minimal cost, it wasn't intended to be suggesting that the township is spending money and that that's a minimal cost. It was simply just to be meaning to capture the small time that it would take for the new position of the grants and partnerships position there to be seeking out these partnerships, that type of hourly cost, or operational cost. That was simply the intent.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
so we're going to go to Councillor Chichuk. She is next on my list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I must say that Councillor Riley did steal a lot of my thunder, and I have to admit that today, having the auditor show up and the idea of delegation of authorities and our responsibility to ensure that there is proper jurisdiction and oversight to the type of thing with delegating duties that we would normally take on ourselves. So I have no problem with the idea that the leadership right now is capable of monitoring this, but as we grow and as things become more complex, whether it's our current leadership or a change, what I'd like to see in this operation is a hard report back and review of the policy every time there's a leadership change. So if the director leaves, we need to make sure that is the business, are we busier than we used to be? Have we got the right people in place? Does it still make sense to delegate this, or is there a different method that will be more cost effective or timely? I would hate to see in the summer it's going to be coming back actually every month, but I would assume that if we had a not-for-profit group coming in and the rate was $100 an hour. And they said, geez, we've got, 60 kids that are in need of physical activity, but we can't afford $100, we can afford 80. That would be the kind of thing in a judgment call, or not-for-profit. It might cost us $80. That Ms. Summer would say the value of that service to children justifies the doing of it, because the gymnasium was free anyway. So we're making a little bit of money, but not as much as what our fee bylaw says. So is that in keeping with where you're going through you, Madam Chair, to Ms. Summer?
Through the chair to the councillor. Yes, that's exactly what I'm imagining. That's what I'm anticipating.
Thank you. So as we get more and more programs, because I know you're working on that and that will happen, the only thing I would look for is that the report back happen on a regular basis, be it quarterly or twice yearly, rather than having you send a redundant report every month that says 0. But I also want to track it, and I would say that we want to report on the change of leadership. That would be something that we should look at. That is our jurisdiction. That is something council should not take for granted, and that we should look at all delegation of duties to staff. It's a two-way street. We need to trust you, but you also need to allow us to have the oversight that has been put into our hands by both the audit and the province. So I would like to see a hard date on this policy of delegation that would say it would be reviewed. So you don't have to leave us, Ms. Summer. I told you we have a long plan. I mean, I have a long plan, and so does council, for you to be with us, but a hard date for a review to see if it is still working. It's still, is it too onerous, or is it onerous enough? So every 2 years the policy has to be reviewed regardless. And that I'd like to see back the guiding principles once they evolve, and I'm not asking for that right now, but as you work through it in your first or second report this year, you would be talking about the kind of guiding principles that have been developed and or need to be implemented to make this work well for you and for council. And I don't want to revoke it, Madam Chair. That's my comment there. I want it to be done so well that we wouldn't have to revoke it, but that it would either be working well, or it would not be working well, and we would all agree that we'll move on from it. But I can't see why it won't work if we have fundamental principles like a hard date for review, a regularized return of information, and a review regardless at the change of leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chichuk. Your suggestions are noted. We'll continue on with some other comments and questions from our other councillors and see where we net out at the end. I will go to Mayor Ganan.
So thank you, Madam Chair. My question, I guess, was really in response to what Councillor Riley was saying, so through you, to the councillor. It does say in the policy as presented that there's a maximum of $10,000, and then it has to come back to council. So I'm thinking that is probably for this case. If we're looking at the rest of the policy as a whole, rather than putting in a large number that's just sort of a number that we're pulling out of the air right now, we accept that as it is, but look at reviewing the policy and hearing back regularly as Councillor Chichuk has suggested. I think that in conversation earlier with the director, she indicated that she's quite willing to bring it back whenever council wants. So if we decide quarterly, it's quarterly. If we decide monthly, it's monthly. If we decide, twice a year is enough, then she's quite content to do that as well. So I think we need to look at getting it rolling, getting it going. I'm quite confident that $10,000 is not going to be used up anytime soon. And I think as long as we're looking at reviewing this policy, making sure that it's a really good policy, then we should be content that it's not going to be overused. I'm very confident that likely the Y is not going to say we'll take the whole summer. I'm not sure that we're ready to give up the whole summer. But if that were the case, then that would be that amount of money that was being used. So I think that your worries are perhaps not ill-founded, but maybe not necessary to address at this point in time.
Like I'm at, if I may, through you, Madam Chair, to Mayor Ganan, Again, it was more like anticipating how this is going to be interpreted in the future and what this could look like.
But I think there are
get right now,
enough things that
we're
we're not going to have to worry about that moving forward.
Absolutely. I just like to make sure that this is rock solid from day one.
Okay, is that it? I will go to Councillor Maychak.
Yes, through the chair, to Cynthia, you wouldn't consider any fee waiver unless it had a cost and community benefit, correct?
Through the chair to the councillor, absolutely.
Okay, you brought up two examples, and I just want to add a little bit to your comment. Minor hockey, a quarterly meeting in one of our meeting rooms that generally would be available in return for virtually hundreds of volunteers, coaches, administrators, putting in thousands of hours over the year to oversee a program that if they didn't do, we would have to staff. And I know I don't want to put you on the spot, but I would assume, or the CAO would know, that that would cost tens of thousands of dollars if we were to administer a program such as minor hockey and use both full and part-time staff. Would that be correct? Okay, and then the other example you used was the YMCA. What I heard, and I mentioned it before, door to door, a lot of the mothers work. They need a place for their child to have daycare or day camp or the day camp experience. And if the YMCA did not provide such a program, but it was needed in the community, I can only imagine the number of staff and or volunteers would have to administer a day camp program.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct as well, right?
Yes.
So it's not just the waiving of a rental fee, it's what would be the cost for us to administer that program. So in cases that you consider, and you've done that to date, including the YMCA, minor hockey, or any group that uses our facilities, there's that discretion. What would it cost the taxpayer and this council and the municipality if we had to run the program ourselves? And if there's a big cost savings and it provides a huge benefit to the community, certainly it's encouraged. My last comment in regards to Councillor Chichuk, I think it would be important to come back twice a year and report to us what fee waivers were done, but what was the cost benefit to it? What was the savings, not just the loss of revenue on the rental, and what was the services they provided so that we know and the community knows what a tremendous job staff are doing to make sure we're delivering the programs in the most cost-efficient way. And I think that is a good suggestion by the other councillor, that you report back those highlights so that the community is aware of some of the fine work and services and programs now being offered, whether we offer them, but in this case, partners are offering, and we're providing a little bit of a concession so that they get to use our facilities, but the primary purpose is to provide programs and services at a greatly reduced cost to benefit our children and youth.
Thank you.
And Councillor Trumbata.
Not much left to say, I think, it's been last.
Troy being
I
the
don't know if I'm
chair.
gonna have a shot at saying anything, someone said they took the thunder, someone took the lightning, someone took the rain and the wind, I got nothing, being honest. But I just wanna add on one thing, is I do like the comments of, when through you, Madam Chair, to the director, when there's a change in the leadership, I think that does need to get revisited, and I think that's important, and I did have some discussions with Cynthia about this. I guess that's more or less on you, Mr. CAO, that when there is change to that position, even before, I guess usually appointing managers to that position, that's got to come to council before we move forward with what we're doing here. I don't have an issue with it, but if we can, I guess, make sure this, tie the knots where we have to tie the knots. I think that's important. So I'll leave it with staff to come up with something in that regard, and you, Mr. CAO, in that regard. So when there is some change, that it does come to council before the manager is appointed, and we can go from there. So I'll leave it with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a win-win. You have another? Okay, thank you. I do think it's such a win-win for the community. I look forward to, more engaging opportunities for events such as we saw yesterday, and partnerships that can afford those kind of events to be coming to West Lincoln. Let's wear those floors out in that community center, so that we need to be putting some new ones in sooner than we thought. And I'll
Thank
go to
you.
Councillor Riley.
So, just one comment, it was mentioned to you, Madam Chair, about reporting semi-annually. I would almost, at least, maybe it's just me, but I would almost feel better if we could do quarterly in the beginning here. I think it gives us a chance to really see it going, keeps a little bit more of those events and partnerships fresh at the time being. And then if there is any concerns in the beginning stages of how things are rolling out, that gives us a fair opportunity to kind of express that to you in a more open, transparent environment. So I would just ask that as we start this, maybe we do like a quarterly reporting and go from there. I'm not too sure how you want to line it up since we're already kind of approaching, I guess, the first quarter here.
Yeah.
But I just put that out there for consideration.
For sure. I would agree with you as well, and I think it's good to remind the public that this is a new thing that we're doing, and by you bringing those quarterly reports to council, it will also be, pushed out a little bit more and reminding the community that that is a newer initiative that's being provided to them. But I'm going to turn to the clerk on what needs to be modified to go forward.
Through the chair, to Councillor Riley and to the benefit of the rest of council, I think that would be an effective reporting tool. And within that reporting tool, for the first go-around or the first few, council can decide in which they would like to pursue the bylaw. Obviously, as this goes on through the years, and Ms. Summers, for many years, will be heading the department, that's where council will be able to review it on an annual basis anyway, as it is council's bylaw. The bylaw wholly belongs to council, and they may review and suggest amendments during that reporting measure, should they wish. So these quarterly, or if they step down to semi-annually, council at that point will be able to make recommendations to staff to either revoke, alter, change, alter the scope, whatever they wish. So I think that this reporting tool will cover some of those concerns that council brought up regarding positional individuals, organizational shifts, scope of the project, it not hitting the mark where they want it to. That will be afforded to them during that reporting stage. So I think that this will holistically apply all of council's concerns, and also for members of the public, their benefit to see what they're getting for these services.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Chichuk, I did not see your hand up. Is that from before or now?
No, I put it down, but I'm just asking because the clerk is suggesting that there would be changes. But the report does say that council approves a bylaw. Is it possible that should be changed to say that staff will return with a bylaw to be approved by council? Because I heard changes, and I'm truly troubled to make sure that we do not obfuscate our responsibilities, and I'd like to see that we have a hard date for review as well as this quarterly to start reporting. So that's not there now, and we should probably amend, or since the bylaw says a bylaw such as the draft attached. So could we see that before we have a bylaw that's approved?
Through the chair, to Councillor Chichok, I can take that as a friendly amendment to suggest, as it would be coming to the February council meeting regardless for approval, that administration return with a bylaw to the February. However, effectively, it would be similar, but I understand your intention with the wording, and I can make that change, and I'm not seeing any shaking heads from members of council.
Madam Chair, and I do appreciate Mr. Clerk's clarification. Can you even highlight those areas where he's made the changes so we don't have to go searching for them?
Okay, very good. I think everybody's in agreement of that. And seeing no other comments or questions, we'll just let the clerk modify the recommendation, and that will be before you shortly.
Through the chair, to Councillor Chichok and to the rest of council, the second recommendation will read that administration return with an amended bylaw to the February 23rd, 2026 council meeting.
Okay. And that carries. 8.4, item CS07-26, Director Corporate Services CFO Caitlin Repoff's Information Report T-03-2026, Ontario Regulation 284 T-04-09 for 2026 budget reporting. Recommendation 1, that the information report T-03 2026 titled Ontario Regulation 284/09 for 2026 budget reporting dated February 17th, 2026 be received for information. Can I have a mover? Mayor Ganan and Councillor Maychuk. And I will turn to the director if she has any further clarification on her report.
Thank you, Chair Broderick. So this is an information report that's following our 2026 budget that was adopted at last month's all-committee meeting. It's a report that meets the requirements of under Ontario Regulation 284/09, and it outlines how certain non-cash expenses such as capital asset amortization and post-employment benefits are excluded from the annual budget process, and it provides the values of those excluded figures. The report also explains that the township puts together the budget on a cash basis, and it includes certain types of transactions that are treated differently from our PSAB compliant financial statements, such as debenture principal repayments and transfers to and from reserves. And going forward, administration will be looking at bringing this information as part of the budget package document. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Do I have any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, the vote will come in front of you. We're not sure if Councillor Chichuk is still there. We're just waiting on her vote. We'll just give her another 5 seconds or so. Okay, so we're going to assume she's left the meeting. And that carries. So I just want to have a clarification from the clerk. Will she be assumed to be gone from the meeting and her vote will no longer count?
Through the chair to the rest of council, I will now be removing her from the roll call. However, I had opened the vote before she had mentioned that she had left, so therefore she was still a sitting member of council, and unfortunately that results in a no vote if you are not there.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Moving on to item CS08-26, Director of Corporate Services, CFO Caitlin Repoffs, and Director of Infrastructure Mike DiPaolo, recommendation report T-02-2026, update to utility billing practice for private multi-residential developments. The recommendation 1, that recommendation report T-02-2026 titled Update to Utility Billing Practices for Private Multi-Residential Developments dated February 17, 2026 is received, and 2, that administration be directed to amend the water and wastewater fixed charges billing methodology for private multi-residential developments serviced by single water meter within a chamber or pit, as outlined in this report, effective January 1st, 2026, and 3, that the bylaw 2026-05 be passed by council at the February 23rd, 2026 council meeting to amend bylaw 2025-72, consolidated fees and charges. Can I have a mover? Councillor Riley, Councillor Maychuk. It seemed fairly self-explanatory, but I will turn to the director to see if she has any further comments.
Thank you, and through Chair Broderick. So this is a recommendation report that outlines a proposed change to the way the township is billing for water and wastewater fixed base charges, specifically for private multi-residential developments that are serviced by a single water meter within a chamber or pit. So for those developments that don't have individual meters at each of their units, there's just one single meter at the property line that's servicing the whole development. So currently, majority of the properties in the urban area that have water, wastewater services are charged a base fee that's based on the size of their installed water meter. So for multi-residential developments that have just a single meter, depending on the meter size and the number of dwelling units in that development, this could mean that there's an overall higher fixed charge for the development, which translates to those individuals may be contributing proportionally more than if they were just serviced by their own single water meter. So therefore, for those multi-residential developments, for any that exist now and then also for future developments, administration is proposing that the fixed charges for those are then based on the number of dwelling units multiplied by a standard meter-based charge rather than the development being charged based on the meter size. So this this per unit approach will then result in a more equitable billing practice across all of our residential dwelling units within the township. And we did, when we were looking at this, we did work with the township's 2025 water and wastewater rate consultant, Watson and Associates, just to review the impacts of this billing methodology change on our water and water financial plan and the water rate study. And they confirmed that it would not have a material impact to either of those studies or plans, and it wouldn't require any change to the current rate structure. And overall, staff are recommending that this change is made effective January 1st, 2026, so that it could take effect for the township's first 2026 quarterly water billing that where the bills will be issued next month.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from any of the members of council? Seeing none, the vote will come in front of you. And that carries. Other business. Item CS0926, members of committee. Any verbal updates from members of boards and committees? Does you have anybody that wants to update us on anything? Seeing none. 9.2, item CS10-26, members of council. Other business items of informative nature. Mayor Ganan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was going to give a report on yesterday, but Cynthia's done a fine job about that. I think for those people who were there, it was a joy, absolute joy, to see the number of people who were taking part in all of the things going on yesterday for Family Day. So I would like to thank staff publicly, thank the public for coming out and supporting all of the things that were provided for them. I think that actually, tonight I went to the pancake supper at St. Luke's, and former Mayor Doug Joyner came by to say, how did things go yesterday? And of course, it was always his goal to have a hockey team there as well. And so he was very pleased to hear that there had been a team, that there's good representation yesterday. The teams have a following, but there were lots and lots of West Lincoln residents there too, cheering them on. And, you know, it was a really good, fast-paced hockey game that people could enjoy. So I think it gives us hope for the future, just to see more and different kinds of things happening in our complex. So that was pretty amazing, good to see, and thank you to staff. And yesterday, Chief, I put something on about the breakfast to make sure that people knew that they should come, but it was really, really busy, and I didn't really get to thank the people who were involved. So please pass on our thanks for a well-done job. I hear they ran out of pancakes eventually, but it was a very long line to stand in, but I didn't hear one complaint about standing there. People were very happy to support, so thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, it was a fabulous event. Councillor Maychuk.
Through the chair, I just want to thank the partners for all their participation. It certainly added to the day, and the Firefighters Association and all the volunteer hours they put in. I was curious, is it okay to ask a question at this time, or is that?
Sure.
I just wanted to ask the fire chief, any accounting on how much money they raise? Because not only do they volunteer their time, but I know they donate to charity, and it's always good to hear about the good things that our firefighters are doing to help West Lincoln.
Mm-hmm. Through the chair, I don't have a hard figure, but I did hear it was over $1,000 raised. So, yeah, Yeah, they served from 8:30 till just before 11 and ran out of all the supplies that they'd brought. So it was, it was a great success for sure. Yeah.
Amazing. Good news story for sure. Anyone else? Okay, we have no new business. There is no confidential matters, and we are going to adjourn this meeting at 7:45. Thank you very much.